Thanks for tuning in to As the Tire Turns podcast. Before we dive into this week's episode, I'd like to thank our sponsor, AME International. Tire professionals insist on AME. I'd also like to recognize the AACF. For over 65 years, the Automotive Aftermarket Charitable Foundation has stood by those in the automotive aftermarket industry and their families during life's toughest challenges. Since 1959, with the incredible support of industry partners, AACF has provided vital assistance to individuals and families facing financial hardship due to unforeseen circumstances, such as floods, earthquakes, storms, fires, catastrophic medical conditions, life-changing accidents, devastating fatalities, and more. AACF offers a straightforward application process and a quick turnaround time for those needing support during critical moments. Visit www.aftermarketcharity.org to access the application and learn more about how AACF can assist during times of need. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of our automotive aftermarket family. Support AACF today. And now, As the Tire Turns. Hi, we're back for another episode of As the Tire Turns. Today's guest is John Melosci. John has a storied career in the tire industry, but he is also the person I'm giving credit to for the phrase "as the tire turns." So, John, as you know, we've talked about that for years, and kind of our business almost being like a little bit of a soap opera. But
yep.
Where did that come from? Is it just
Just kind of exactly that. A lot of people that come into this industry stay in the industry. They just don't always stay in one spot.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that get recycled or retreaded, to use an industry term. And it just seemed fitting to go with our industry. And like I said, there's a good portion of people that stay in one spot for a very long time. And there seems to be another little group that kind of is in the industry and they're around. And they just, work at a couple, 2-3 different places over time. Such as myself.
Me as well, and I noted that earlier that people don't really leave the industry; they just show up with a different logo on their shirt. And I probably didn't think I'd ever be one of them, but yet,
nor did I.
Yeah,
nor did I.
Here I am. Things change. So I'm always curious as to how people enter the tire industry, right? Growing up as a kid, I think you want to be a cop, a teacher, whatever, right? You don't necessarily an athlete, right? You don't think I want to be in the tire industry, and yet it's a great industry. But your path is probably a little bit different because you entered somewhat the family business, right?
Correct.
So are you third generation?
I was third generation, correct.
Yeah.
My grandfather started a business that my dad entered called Tony's Tire. Tony was my grandfather. He didn't really get it going too much. He kind of worked out of his house, like just kind of made a living doing some labor and doing things in the industry. He had to, he obviously started the name. Then my dad, when he went to college briefly, and when he came out of college, he partnered up with a gentleman named Jerry Barnett, and they really took Tony's Tire to like a whole new level, where they had a physical building. They had, I think at one point they had 20 plus service trucks with boom trucks and service trucks, and it was a prime time to get into the industry. Long Island, in New York, was booming with growth and activity. Long Island,
yeah. I thought it might have been the Deep South.
No. Don't let the accent fool you. So yeah, and then I grew up literally on a service truck. I mean, my dad was like a 24/7 guy, and he worked weekends early on just to kind of make ends meet. And then even as things were doing, when he was doing better with the business, he continued to work a pretty rigorous schedule. So to see my dad, I kind of had to go to work. And I can remember sitting on the tailgate of a truck holding an O-ring, just kind of waiting for him to tell me he was ready for the O-ring. And I think by second or third grade, I knew the difference between a 25-inch fat and a 25-inch skinny O-ring. And he would tell me which he needed, and I would just sit there and kind of pester him, asking him if he was ready yet. And, every 5 minutes, are you ready? Are you ready? And so I kind of learned a little differently than most in the industry. A lot of people start usually with like passenger and light truck and kind of work their way up up to off-road. I kind of worked from off-road down. My dad did a lot of his off-road work on weekends and off hours, and that's when I was available as a student to be with him. So often he came home with the boom truck on like a Friday night, and it was like, Christmas was coming tomorrow, and I knew to be up early and get out on the boom truck. So I learned how to change off-road tires before I knew how to change like a commercial tire or a truck tire.
Yeah.
So I didn't learn until much later on that was kind of not the typical path for how you learned how to change tires. But I learned with off-road. I started with the bigger stuff, and like I said, whether it was pushing on the manual pump as much as I could, as I grew, I was allowed to do more and more, and like I said, I kind of eased my way into it, and by age 14, I think I was like left alone to like get started, I'll be back, and he just kind of disappeared on me, and next thing I know, I had done 4 tires on a machine, and here he came back saying, "You did pretty good, I was watching you from over there," and I was kind of like all in at that point, and but no, I didn't grow up with the dream to be in the tire business. I was in, I played sports and I was an athlete, and I had some aspirations to maybe be, a professional athlete and whatnot. And I liked working with my hands. I liked being outside. So it was just, it was an easy fit to just kind of stay in the family business.
And you were actually considering, I know, I think you had an offer for a baseball scholarship down in Florida.
Yes.
Was that kind of a pivotal moment, right? Going the college path or the join the family biz?
Yeah, I had an injury in my baseball career that kind of knocked me back a bit to where I wasn't quite able to throw as hard. I had an arm injury, and I was a catcher, not a pitcher, but my arm was equally important, and I kind of lost that little edge. So it kind of knocked me back to being, more of an average player, and I kind of quickly realized that track and that trajectory was not really going to be a reality. So, and like I said, there was a family business staring me in the face, and it was thriving at that time. It was, as I was kind of leaving high school and whatnot, his business was like kind of peaking.
Yeah.
They were at like their high watermark for number of employees, trucks, customers, volume of business. Like they were really just busting at the seams. So, and then they had a need with the off-road section machine. They lost an employee that did their off-road section repairs. They had just bought a machine, and I was just kind of asked if I wanted to step in and do that. And next thing I know, I was on a plane to Germany, certified to do section repairs. And
with the thermopress?
Yeah, EM thermopress too.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. It kind of just stuck.
I was going to get into that, but you've worked really in all aspects. I mean, you've been on the supply side, you've
Yes.
been in purchasing, you've been with a manufacturer, product management, and of course now with AME, right? More of a sales capacity, but still out in the field quite a bit.
Yes.
And so on. So I guess what have you learned from all those different roles, right? Because not everybody sees all the different perspectives or views.
Right. I made the switch not necessarily by choice. I really loved what I did when I was out on the service truck and doing the tire repair and changing tires, and I really had an expectation that would be my entire career, that I would never leave that path. But unfortunately, I did get hurt, working on a commercial truck tire. I had a tire let go on me, and I suffered some permanent damage to my left hand. And that kind of made it unrealistic for me to be kind of servicing tires. So I took a brief kind of detour, not necessarily out of the business, but I did get myself back in college. I got a college degree. I got certified to teach. I thought maybe I was going to get out of the industry. I kind of worked part-time as I was having surgeries and doing physical therapy, kind of rehabbing from my accident. And a close friend of mine in the industry offered me a job in distribution, and it was an easy, natural fit, and so I really never got out. It kind of pulled me right back in, and I did. I spent about 20 years on the distribution side. I just, having worn so many hats and seen it from different angles, it makes it pretty easy for me at this point to, be a resource and help people, whether it's with educating with, what tool to use, safety, all the different aspects. Having done the work, it's much easier to talk about the tools and the items that are out there for people And I think there's a credibility that you have when you're kind of up out of the trenches where you've done it, and people know that you like were one of them and you did the work. I think it makes a difference.
And that close friend was Ed Rorty, right?
Correct. Ed
Warehouse?
Rorty at SD Warehouse.
Yeah.
He was my supplier.
Yeah.
We're roughly the same age. We kind of came into the business almost at the same time. Him on the supply side, me on the tire repair and changing side. He spent a lot of time with me, learning what I did and how I did. I spent some time in and around him with what he did, so we kind of had a glimpse into each other's world. And after I got hurt, he was one of the first guys there to support me and help me.
Yeah.
And like I said, that kind of got me transitioned over out of the service truck. And now I'm very happy that I get to kind of transition back into it a little bit through some of the TIA events and the trainings. It's nice to kind of get my hands back in there a little bit, even though I can't do it full time. It's nice to kind of be back in that realm, so to speak, and even getting to drive a boom truck again and operate a boom truck is kind of is a fun little extra that goes with my current position.
So you mentioned the incident or the accident, but I mean it was significant. You were that wasn't like a trip to the ER.
Oh no, it was very significant.
As comfortable as you are, like what can you tell us about that?
I had an 11/24/5 bias ply tire that I had used ether to seat the bead. These, this was pre-bead seaters. The industry was a little different then. I knew that it wasn't the safest thing to do. I didn't know and I wasn't aware that there was a potential for an internal tire fire, which is what happened. So the tire built a tremendous amount of pressure and eventually let go. It hit me mid-forearm on my left arm, and I spent 28 days in the hospital, and I'd lost my sight for close to a week. I couldn't see from all the debris and the things that hit me in the face. I'm lucky even to this day to have my sight. I came very close to losing my sight in my left eye. I had some burns, and I lost most of the function in my left hand. I was able to kind of rebuild myself in a way where I had a lot of surgeons that went above and beyond to kind of keep me together, keep my arm attached, and do some work where I was able to get back, and I kind of custom tailored how I kind of positioned my thumb and my fingers so I could hold the steering wheel and drive my truck again and do certain things to kind of get back out there. I was determined to not really let that stop me. But yeah, it was 28 days in the hospital. It was 4 years of physical therapy and surgeries, 8 surgeries. I was on a cast or a splint for almost 4 full years.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't just a little quick trip for a few stitches.
No.
It was pretty significant.
And that's the part that blows my mind with all the things going on and surgeries to kind of get you back together. And even though you have limited use on the left arm, is that they basically said we're going to set it right in a position. That's it. You're not going to get movement and so on. And your first thought was to be able to hold a steering wheel.
Yeah, button my pants, tie my shoes, and hold the steering wheel.
Yeah.
Because I'd been a few years without being able to tie my shoes, and it was a struggle to button my pants and stuff like that. Some very simple day-to-day things. And even now, most people don't recognize that I even have the disability at times.
Yeah.
I can get by with most anything pretty easily, but there are some very simple things sometimes that people ask me to do, and I just kind of look at them like, sorry, I can't do that. And even my own kids sometimes will ask me something, they're like, oh, sorry, forgot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just kind of put your head down and just kind of get through it and find a way.
Yeah. Well,
So.
I know it took me even knowing you a few years before I was aware, right? You don't see it and so on. And I guess with your right hand, you have enough of a handshake that you just survive that. And so, but anyway, I think it's telling too that you went back and you were looking to become a teacher, and now all these years, right? A good portion of your time is spent out in the field, working with commercial dealers, and I guess knowing, right, and there's been a tremendous amount of progress, but from how you, right, learned.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure, hey,
Oh,
shadow the veteran, right?
mm-hmm.
Okay, kid, you got it, and
Yeah.
on it, right? What would you tell some of the technicians who are out there, that still there's still a lot of, I don't know, bravado. I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
they're, within the tire industry and so on. And so I think we've come a long way. But what would you say to some of the technicians, having you sat through a number of different classes, commercial, earth
Mm-hmm.
mover, with respect to the training that goes on out there?
My main point is talk to each other. I mean, at the point when I had gotten trained, there wasn't really much formal training. The experienced people didn't tend to want to train newer people. And now through social media and other means, there's ways to reach out. There's ways to communicate with people that you didn't have in the past. There's plenty of work to be done out there. And even myself, I've learned through some of the TIA classes I'm in that, region to region, job to job, things are very different. I've learned stuff being up even around Iowa. Like it's a very different world than I service tire wise, and like I'm still learning stuff. Just talk to each other. There's a lot of resource out there. Someone has worked on that, whether it's getting yourself into a formal class or just talking to people in the industry that, just people want to share that information. They want to help. Just reach out. Don't be afraid to ask. And like I said, just talk to each other. The information's out there.
Yeah.
Just like I said, take a minute and try to, educate yourself a little bit, because the mistake, everyone, nothing's a problem until it's a problem.
Right.
I mean, I had a perfect track record. I was, batting 1,000 until I wasn't, and it can change very quickly. And in this line, unfortunately, you don't necessarily get a second chance.
And you were very fortunate because you were in a metro area
Yes.
when the incident occurred. But literally,
The stars aligned for me. There was an ambulance literally like a block away at a red light waiting to return to the hospital, and happened to get the call and had to go like 1,000 feet to me.
yeah.
And doc, like I said, I had stars aligned. Like I have no business being here. Outside.
And I won't keep dwelling on it, but do you remember being in the ambulance?
I do. I
You do?
remember
Okay.
everything. I remember it all.
Okay, I wasn't sure if there's a point.
Yeah,
that you
no,
realized-
I stayed conscious. I couldn't see, so I think that kept me from going into shock, and that's kind of what the doctors told me probably happened, is that without seeing what had happened, I kind of stayed somewhat alert.
Right.
And I just remember, like, even the pain kind of went away. The body just kind of shut it all down. And I just
Right.
kind of remember being kind of like almost like an out-of-body thing, where it was like I was like looking at myself and not even really feeling things. And I was kind of somewhat alert until I went in for surgery, and then I lose like 2-3 days,
Yeah.
where I don't really remember anything for a 2-3 day period, and then I pick up again perfectly and have memory of everything from that point forward again. So my first surgery was almost 12 hours, and I guess that procedure and the anesthesia and whatnot, like I said, I got like a 2.5 day, 3 day window where it's like I don't know. People are telling me what I said, what I did, and
Yeah.
I don't have a recollection of it.
Yeah. So switching gears, we're gathered here. Sounds like a wedding almost, but
Yeah.
we are here at the Off the Road conference in Las Vegas, and this is, I think, your third year
Yep.
attending. And so, knowing, to your point, right, you growing up and having kind of worked in the OTR business, it is a differentiator out there, right? It's kind of a unique category, that OTR tech.
Oh, yes.
And the OTR business in itself, right? Even though a lot of players, do commercial and some may hit retail and so on, off the road is kind of its own unique category or subset. So, what have you found from coming out here? The engagement and the people that are
Just really the resource and knowledge that's here. I mean, the amount of vendors from, the tire manufacturers, other vendors, the people that build the trucks, the people that make the tools, the number of years experience, in this building right now that'll be out on this floor is just, it's second to none. And I'm quite impressed in the role I've had now in the last few years, where I've been kind of in the manufacturing side of things. I'm quite impressed with how free everyone is to share that information, especially with regards to safety and tooling and whatnot. So like I said, just the information, the knowledge, it's there. And like I said, to be around a group of people that have been in the industry, there's probably there's probably 12, 15, 20 people here that have, 30 plus years if not hundreds.
Yeah.
That have 20 plus years, and like I said, it's just a lot of very knowledgeable people, and you just keep learning.
We didn't talk specifically about, but one of the roles that you had was in procurement, and it was for a pretty good size distributor, Mohawk Rubber Sales. Knowing your love of baseball, and in the purchasing role, a lot of people wanting to get cozy with you and warranty or so on. I've heard you sometimes referred to as America's guest.
Yes.
And so you have traveled quite a bit, and it's a passion of yours, but both professionally and personally. But are there any bucket list type items, or what's some of your memories from some of your travels and getting to see?
Been to half of the ballparks at this point.
Baseball
ballparks.
Yes.
Been to some of the biggies regarding Yankee Stadium, Fenway, Wrigley. Still have a lot of West Coast to cover.
Yeah.
So I'm anxious to get some West Coast cities under my belt and some cities there. And yeah, it's great getting out, meeting people, seeing the different stadiums, and catching a game here and there. And I just never get enough baseball. So I'm glad we're back in season. Bucket list wise, I got to get to Field of Dreams, and I need to do College World Series.
Yeah.
One of these years, I'm going to take some vacation time, and I want to spend
Omaha, right?
Omaha, Nebraska.
College World Series, yeah.
Yep, that College World Series.
And actually, you mentioned Long Island, right? And you mentioned Yankee Stadium, and I know you're just a fan of the sport, but you didn't necessarily grow up a Yankee fan, right?
No, I didn't. Ironically, I grew up more of a Red Sox fan, living in New York. My great uncle played professional baseball, and I wasn't alive when he played. He played for the Senators. He had a pretty long career. But in his retirement from playing, he became a third base coach. So he coached for the New York Mets very early in my life, too young for me to really know or pay attention to baseball at that point. And he landed with the Boston Red Sox and Don Zimmer right kind of in my peak young, little boy baseball years. We went to Yankee Stadium with all our Red Sox gear on, my dad, my great-grandfather, and my brother. And we went and sat behind the screen and cheered for the Red Sox as Uncle Ed was over at third base coaching. And
that was Eddie Yost?
Eddie Yost.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, that was a great run from like the mid-'70s into, I think, late 70s or maybe 1980 for like 6 years. So I thought that was normal to just go to a game, get balls signed by Carlton Fisk and Carl Yastrzemski and Reggie Jackson and Thurman Munson and, sit behind the net and shake hands with a couple of players and have them pat you on the head. I was hardcore Red Sox very, very early. My own children grew up kind of more traditional New York fans, but I kind of grew up a Red Sox fan.
Wrapping up, you mentioned Iowa, and I know you've been out to Stellar's facility and toured that and watched some of the service trucks, and I think you actually helped reposition a truck for them, so got you into the service truck, and then you participate and help do some trainings and demonstrations that are out in the field. So what would you say is when you see some of the tools or the technology that's available today versus what you had, right, when you were, and you go back to, I remember the story, I think, during the cleaning of 9/11 and all that debris, right? Basically, that's what you were still active. That was pre-injury.
No, 9/11 was post-injury.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yeah.
But you're
I was in New York, though, at the time, working for Ed.
Okay.
So I was, I had a lot of friends in the business, and I was, I had a little side hustle here and there where I would go out on a Saturday with one of my dad's trucks and do a little something here or there to help out.
Okay.
So I was dabbling in some off-road work at that point, but not full-time.
Right, okay. So what's the biggest, boy, I wish I had that when I was, changing tires for a living.
I mean, just to not have to use wood blocks, the cribbing and the jack plates, that's game changer.
Yeah.
That wasn't even on the horizon when I was changing tires. And then, like I said, in the trucks and the thought that now goes into the truck with the layout, with, where there's a spot for everything and, the compartments and the place to hold everything and the tire hands and, tire hands were barely in the market. We had a stick boom.
Yeah.
So the manipulate, the tire hand, it's very different. And like I said, I'm a little jealous of some of the tools and some of the equipment they get to work with now,
Yeah.
compared to what we had.
They certainly make the job easier. So,
Yeah.
all right. Is there anything you want to say or anything in closing?
Thank you for having me. I
Sure.
appreciate the opportunity to participate, and I look forward to hearing the whole series.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Well, thanks, and please join us next time on As the Tire Turns. I guess, John, do you want to say that? I feel like you should. Yeah.
Join us next time for As the Tire Turns.
Thanks for listening to As the Tire Turns. Tune in next week for a very Canadian episode when we sit down with guest Chris Brothen.